New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring. And hello again, dear ones. Reverend Robert behind the banner here.
Rev Z over here.
And this is New Thought Today. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being with us. We're here on the New Thought Media Network. We do this every Tuesday at 2 p.m. And for those that have been with us recently, you know that we have had an amazing run and an amazing series of guests on with us recently, and that's not changing today by any means. Today we have the Right Reverend Sandra J. Campbell with us. She is an ordained Unity minister and the executive director of Unity Urban Ministerial School. She's an associate minister at Unity Temple on the Plaza in Kansas City, Missouri, and serves on the Unity World Headquarters Board of Directors. Reverend Campbell graduated from Unity Urban Ministerial School in 2012 and was ordained by Unity Worldwide Ministries in 2013. Prior to becoming a minister, Sandra was a manager with the Federal Aviation Committee and retired from that position in 2012 after 42 years of career as federal service. If you can do 42 years in the Fed, you can be minister, yes. You're definitely qualified to run ministry. Reverend Sandra is an accomplished writer, playwright, storyteller, and historical reenactor. She's performed her own one-woman shows before thousands within and outside of the U.S. Her one-woman show, Follow Your Dreams, The Bessie Coleman Story, has received international acclaim and numerous awards. Among her many awards and accolades are the prestigious Humanitarian Award by the Tuskegee Airmen International Incorporated, the Historic Preservation Medal for Outstanding Achievement in Historic Preservation by the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, and many, many more. If all the names were that long, I appreciate you not making me say all of those. There's a long list of awards here in her career, and all of those for exceptional contribution to aviation as well. Reverend Sandra has been honored with an engraved paver in the memory lane at the International Forest of Friendship in Atchison, Kansas. She holds an associate, bachelor's, and master's degrees and is in the doctoral program at Holos University, soon to be completing her doctorate in ministry. Congratulations there. Reverend Sandra is a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, the National Black Coalition of Federal Aviation Employees, the Tuskegee Airmen Incorporated, and Women in Aviation International Incorporated. She lives in Lee Summit, Missouri, with her husband, Phil, U.S. Army retired and a retiree from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. They have 3 grown children, 4 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren, and a couple of phone call sponsors that just kind of like to keep trying to find their way into her attention. We are so grateful that you're with us today, Reverend Sandra. Welcome to New Thought Today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's good to be here.
It is.
Yes,
good.
And it's good to find out that that you're one of my sororities. I'm an Omega. So
Q Sci-Fi. Okay.
Yes. So that's a surprise I didn't expect. But hey, I love it.
Yeah.
Are you going to kick us off here today?
Yeah. So I was just trying to think of where to start. Well, let's do it this way. Reverend Sandra, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself in your own words and what gets you up every morning, and then we'll we'll kick it from there.
Well, thank you. Can I say Reverend Z?
Yes, that's exactly right.
And Reverend Brz.
Brz is good.
That's it.
Yes.
Thank you for asking, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. My mother just passed away this last November at the age of 101, and I know she sent that to you. So she was a very proud woman of her 3 children. I was the youngest. I'm inspired when I see people on fire. And if I can light a match to start that fire, I'm excited, even more excited. So I've always been that way. I love to see people coming into truth. I was 21 when I was introduced to truth, to New Thought, and it changed my life. And I want to convey that to everybody I meet, but I know everybody's not ready for that. But those who are, I'm ready to share that with them, that you can live the life of your dreams and you can be all that you're meant to be if you learn just some basic principles. And I'm so grateful that at that young age, I was introduced to those principles. So that's really my reason for being. I always say I was born to network. And thank you, Reverend Brzezinski, for making that comment about the phone. I can't seem to get it to stop. I can't turn it off. I've tried everything. I'm in my office and my husband will grab it quickly, but it's always a spam call. Nobody except spam people love me, or love us. But anyway, so I'm here to serve. I'm here to demonstrate truth by my own walk and my own falling down and getting back up. I love to tell people I'm not perfect, and when I'm on the platform, I usually start off by saying, I'm reading my own mail. So I'm just letting you in on it, but I'm reading my own mail. So
yes. Well, I think that's so fitting because as they say, what's clear to me is clear to me. And if I can't convey that in a manner to get you in to be curious enough or to entice you enough to listen to that story, I'm talking in the wind. And so I think that whole idea of I'm reading my own mail and letting you in on it is a great way to set up a real open and honest communication, which, as we know, is one of the things that needs some more upliftment in our current environment.
Absolutely. And in response to that too, storytelling, I'm here our lives are stories. Everybody's life is a story. And every individual that comes into your life is a chapter, a segment of that story.
Right.
And it's up to us to convey our stories so that we can help people to live their stories. Sometimes we hide our lights under a bushel. We don't want people to know our story. Maybe our story was not as pleasant as we think, but all that is a learning experience. And if I'm willing to be open and honest and authentic and transparent and share my story, the good, the bad, and the not so good, I don't know how far reaching that can be, but it is going to benefit somebody. Yeah. So one of my greatest passions is storytelling. And quite a few years ago, I had the opportunity to stand in for Bessie Coleman's posthumous induction into the Women in Aviation International Pioneer Hall of Fame. And it was the year that the postage stamp came out with her picture on it. It was right before that happened. And I stood there that evening in awe of what I was hearing about this woman who I knew very little about. Not a lot was published about her. Nothing hardly in the history books. Now, I grew up in Kansas, so I knew all about Amelia Earhart. But I did not know that Bessie Coleman had to go to France to learn to fly. And she got her license, an international pilot's license, 2 years before Amelia Earhart. So the significance of me having a paver at the International Forest of Friendship is that's Amelia Earhart's grounds. That's her family dedicated acreage in memory of her and in honor of those who followed in the footsteps in aviation and aerospace. People have pavers there or something on a tree for their particular part of the world, like Colin Powell and Mae Jemison. So I'm honored to be there on that paver on the ground. And Bessie Coleman is not far from me, but she was not allowed to join that organization that is responsible for this program in honor of Amelia. Amelia was the first president of the 99s. The 99s were the first 99 women pilots from the United States. And Bessie Coleman, of course, could not get a pilot's license here at that time. She had to go to France. So I'm honored to be part of that and honored to tell her story. PBS produced it in 2000. It aired on PBS. I performed before a live audience, and I'm just a storyteller. I'm not a professional actress, but I grew up with Louisiana and Arkansas storytellers. You know, the old folks, you sit around and, you know, and those stories that they would let you be a part of, because a lot of times they didn't, you know, kids gotta, you know, you got to get, because we're going to tell some stories we want the kids to hear, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I remember that, and I loved the stories. And I used to spend my summers in Arkansas and Louisiana with grandparents and aunts and uncles. And my grandfather was a phenomenal storyteller. Yeah. So the TV never worked, and the party line, you know, with the telephones. I'm dating myself. So when I was a teenager and couldn't talk on the phone to my friends back in Kansas because party lines, my grandpa entertained me with stories. And I never forgot that, how mesmerized I was by storytelling. Wow. And I want, and it's kind of a lost art. We're so busy with technology now that we don't, those stories, you know, when you bring a story to life, because I actually portray Bessie Coleman. I don't just tell her a story. I become Bessie in full regalia. And Kathy Williams. Kathy Williams was a Buffalo soldier, the only female Buffalo soldier from Missouri. She was a slave in Missouri. And I portray Fannie Lou Hamer, the civil rights activist. So I have 3.
Wow. Well, you know, that just sent me on a whole journey there, in so many different reasons. One, you know, Robert always says, if I talk to somebody long enough, I'm going to find a connection with that person. And so, you know, I'm listening to you tell your story about aviation. I worked on the first 4 launchings of the space shuttle. And so right there's a connection when you start talking about aviation and everything. But the thing that really hit me most is when you talked about telling the story and being mesmerized, you know, because when we go back to Mesmer, where a lot of the new thought started, his whole thing was to mesmerize, was basically telling a story or to get you in a frame of mind where you could characterize yourself or see someone portray someone and really feel immersed in that idea, in that, you know, particular person. And at its heart, I think that's what new thought is. It's this idea of having a new thought or a new projection of who you are and where you are and what's a possibility when you learn these universal principles. Yeah. Whether it's unity, religious science, divine science, any of them. Because that universal principle of everything starts with the thought. And when I tell a story, I'm just colorizing, if you will, my thoughts or someone's thoughts. And if we can put that into everything we do, then life becomes, you know, our greatest masterpiece. And I love that.
Right. Yeah. We're actually like Michelangelo. You know, we're actually painting with words. Yes. You know, and if you can draw people in when you can paint a picture with words. You know, I begin with a Southern drawl from my grandparents and my dad, my mom, you know, who never forgot where they came from. And my dad served in World War II, and it was after the war that he decided the farm wasn't big enough for him. So they moved to Kansas from Louisiana. But I will start with, my name is Bessie Coleman, and I was born January 26, 1892 BT. Now, just from the accent and just from the drawl, now people are curious. You draw them in. Yeah. I had a 6th grade teacher who, my first male teacher, 6th grade, he had graduated from University of Kansas with a degree in elementary education and music, and he was an accomplished jazz pianist. Went on to play for the Minneapolis Symphony. He left Kansas as a young adult. And Dr. Reginald Buckner. Dr. Buckner used to say, give that boy or that girl a purple jelly bean. And he would say that. He wouldn't give us jelly beans, but if we did work the problem right on the board, or this was 6th grade, just learning algebra and that sort of thing. And I went to all Black schools, grew up in the Black community. Elementary, we had selected schools for Blacks. I had elementary, junior high, and high school, and some of the best teachers. And I never forgot that. So when I wrote this play one night and performed it the next day for a Black history program at the school where I was working with them to teach the kids aviation. And as my job at the time was public affairs officer. So one of my jobs was educating the public. And so I had a program where I would I had other people to go, we trained them to go to schools from elementary to high school and teach, now we call it the STEM program, but teach them how everything they learn in school relates to careers in aviation. Very selfishly, we're trying to build a future for aviation to make sure we have people taking our place. But I performed that play the next day, and I knew I had to have a hook. I had to have something that these little kids in 7th and 8th grade would want to pay attention to me, not just the outfit I was wearing, but so I hooked them with the jelly beans, only I actually went and bought purple jelly beans. So people now call me the purple jelly bean lady. But when I perform, I just performed in Chicago at the Bessie Coleman's, the anniversary of her death. We usually perform there, but this year was in June, which would have been the anniversary of her getting her license. And the first thing I was asked by one of the Chicago Dodo chapter Tuskegee Airmen who brings me there was, "You got to bring your jelly beans, aren't you?" So everybody thinks, so I give them out, I ask a question, and if they answer, they get a purple jelly bean. So, something that gets people's attention, gets them excited.
It does. And as you're talking, I'm my whole mind, I'm looking at these universal principles, and there's a universal correspondence right there.
Yeah.
Of being able to present something to someone and they provide a response that's in line with it in a corresponding way, and you get a jelly bean. And so when we look at life and these principles, when we're able to articulate them verbally and physically in our lives, we begin to see the correspondence of our work, or we begin to understand the polarity of life and how it fits in one grand interconnected thing, and that's what life's about. And as you sit and tell these stories, because I grew up in Florida, so when we talk about the stories and the draws, and I grew up in North Florida, so we were 34 miles from Georgia and about 34 miles from Alabama, so we had a Bama, Florida, Georgia thing going on in terms of your accent could morph at any moment. And
he knows that somebody from everywhere. He knows somebody from everywhere.
and when I think about these principles, and especially when I start thinking about the conference, Celebrating Our Soul, that the conference that's being put on by African Americans for everybody, but telling that African American story in this genre, if you will, in this way of life from a African American perspective, it opens the door for so many things and for so much progress. And I'm just excited about it. And I'm so glad that you're going to be there doing a workshop on storytelling, because I think that's what perhaps one might say is lacking in our involvement in this movement, is the storytelling of those that are known, and far greater those that are unknown in this New Thought movement. So I'm excited about this thing.
Yeah, me too. And when people ask me, how did I sat there that evening after work. I'd rented a costume on my way home. The principal called me. She was desperate. Their speaker had canceled. It was the next day, Black History. Can you send us somebody? We had all kinds of professional people, but who could I get for the next day? And that little voice in my head said, you stood in for Bessie and you said you were going to go out and tell people about it a year ago, almost a year ago. And I had 2 books, but I'd never read them. But everything I know is in that play. So you'll hear a lot of new thought in that play, a lot of new thought. One of the things I try to bring in bullying. I talk about, in Bessie's vernacular, I'll talk about, well, Papa always said, follow your dreams and don't take no for an answer, because every no brings you closer to a yes. That becomes a mantra that I repeat so much that in the end of the play, people repeat it for me. Yes. And that's, when I take my bow. And also I use, my mother only got to go to 8th grade because of depression. And she used to recite this poem by Douglas Malloch, which you probably heard Dr. King recite in some of the recordings, be the best of whatever you are. Mm-hmm. And so that is something I will tell them that Bessie got from one of the books on the traveling wagon that her father liked. But the truth is my mother taught me that poem. And no matter, don't try to be somebody else, or don't try to, but be the best of whatever you are. And I tell especially young people, when Bessie's life comes to an end in Jacksonville, Florida, by the way, in a plane crash on April 30th, 1926. I was born on April 30th, 25 years later. So when I wrote that play that night, I knew there was a very common connection. And Atlanta, Texas is just a stone's throw where she grew up, where she was born, a stone's throw from Texarkana, which is where Mom and I, when we go down home, would change buses from the Jefferson on the Continental to the Jefferson line, go to El Dorado, and Grandpa would pick us up. So all those connections, but I always close with, it's hard for young people to end with, she died. She falls out of the plane, she dies, right? Not a good ending. I'm not telling y'all this to make you afraid of flying, because you have a greater chance of walking across the street being run over by a horse and wagon today than you do in being killed in an airplane accident. You have the safest air transportation system in the world right here in these United States. I'm not telling y'all this to make you want to be flyers. My story is called Follow Your Dreams, not Follow Bessie's Dreams. I'm not telling y'all this to make you afraid of dying. You're all going to die someday. You either live your life for your purpose, or you die without ever living your purpose. So I try to make sure that I don't make dying sound like the end of the play, the end of the story. And that the most important thing is living your dream while you are alive, doing what's in you to do, singing that song and not dying with the music inside you. So I try to put everything I know into that.
I am looking forward. We have to set a date, me and you, to have a cup of coffee or get breakfast, because you're sharing these stories and they're so embodied in me. My father would have been 26 in the Depression. He was born in 1906, and so when he used to tell me about growing up in that environment and the things that he had to deal with and how he got over, those very principles were New Thought principles. They may have called them a progressive Christianity, or I'm not sure how they would have labeled them, but those ideas of persevering and casting your own vision and doing your thing, and not be caught up in the surroundings, or as we say, don't be caught up in the conditions of life, because you can move beyond those and conditions change. The thing that you have more control over in terms of unchanging or unfailing, as they say in the Bible, unfailing faith is you. And, same thing. I caught the bus and the train. I caught the train from Tallahassee to Jacksonville and change and go up to Philadelphia. And there's so much, as I sit here and listen to you tell me now, the things my grandfather would tell me while we were riding on the train or whatever. When I look at it now, it was New Thought-ish, if you will. I had that New Thought tinge. So a lot of us from the African-American community have grown up with these ideas implanted in us because it was a way for us to overcome, if you will.
Absolutely.
I am happy that you're going to be there, and I can't wait.
Well, thank you. I can't wait to see your workshop too. I'm glad we're not at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah.
You might be running from room to room to catch each other. And I'm sitting here once again thinking to myself, I love the fact that I'm going to be in another location and booked at another event, and that but I'm a little jealous because I want my purple jelly bean.
Well, I might have I'll send you one.
Okay. Folks, if you wonder what you stumbled into, this is New Thought Today on the New Thought Media Network. I'm Rev Brz. My dear friend and co-host Rev Z is here today, and we've got the right Reverend Sandra Campbell with us also. We're going to take a quick break, let everybody have a quick sip of water and a quick stretch and share, and we'll be back with more. We've got a lot to talk about today, so I'm excited, and really, we're here talking about the Celebrating Our Soul Conference, so let us share a little bit more about that with you. Stay tuned. We've got a whole bunch more here on New Thought Today. And we're back with more of New Thought Today here on the New Thought Media Network. I'm Rev Robert, my dear friend and co-host Rev Z. We're both here today with Rev Sandra Campbell and talking about the Celebrating Our Soul conference. It's coming up at Unity Village in just about how many days?
4 weeks. In 4 weeks.
Yeah.
4 weeks.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I've got the question I have, Reverend Sandra, you're doing storytelling, and we've caught a little bit about Bessie here tonight so far, and you share that you have a couple of other stories that you tell. It almost seems a little silly, but are you working on a Johnny Coleman story?
How did you guess? Yes, Reverend Shirley Lawson saw my one-woman show, and she then decided that I had to be Johnny Coleman. Now I'm 5'3.5". Johnny Coleman was 6'1" or 6'2".
Right.
And not just tall in stature, just tall in consciousness. And then it's ironic that I was in Virginia with Unity of Bonaire. I was performing and speaking. And I told the woman where I was staying, Gail, that I was asked to do something on Johnny Coleman. She says, "Oh, one of our board members was one of her assistants." And called, his wife was her assistant for 25 years, and called him, and he came over to her house. And the next day he brought tapes and all kinds of things. Shirley has sent me outfits and, all kinds of things. And she's determined that I am going to be Johnny Coleman. We were going to do it before COVID. And right at the time when they had scheduled me to do it, COVID hit. And I was like, phew, because that's a huge order and a huge act to follow. But I'm working on it.
Okay, good. Well, we're looking forward to that, because when it happens, we'd love to make sure we share it with the world as well. So.
Thank you.
Cool. So if you would tell us a little bit more, what can people expect from your workshop if they're able to attend in person in August?
Well, it will be interactive. So there will be some tips on how do you tell your own story. You don't need to invent a story or do someone else's story. We each are storytelling organisms. And so if we just tell, and we might think, well, who want to hear my story? Everybody wants to hear your story, because otherwise people can't know you based on a few little things that they observe about you, or you might say, but sometimes it's a surprise when we learn certain things about people. And as Rev Z and I have connected, we learn our common threads, what connects us together. And as you said earlier, that if you talk to him long enough, you're probably going to find even more connections. So that's probably true. And that's true for all of us, but we don't always tell our stories. And we don't know that we may be cousins. That was the reason that I had to go to Louisiana all those summers. My father was a hilarious storyteller. He didn't intend to be, but he could have been a stand-up comedian. But he said, you got to know who your folk is, because you might marry one of them. So as a result, I had to go down there in the sweltering heat every summer of my life till I was 16 and protested loud enough.
Yes.
And now I regret that they didn't make me stay there. We hold the record for the largest number of family members who graduated from Grambling State University. So I could have been there. I didn't go to Grambling. But, it's just those stories are who we are, and they help us to heal. I'm going to be doing we're doing a grief as a spiritual practice workshop in October at Unity Village. And I'm doing mine on the healing power of grief, the healing power of story. Because until we let those stories out, they're just like a sore that never heals. There could be a story in there just waiting to break out. And that story may be the thing that heals you, telling that story, hearing yourself tell the story, listen to other people's stories. So you'll get a glimpse of all of that. And hopefully everybody will walk away with inspiration to start telling their story.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sitting here just trying to contain myself because you got my mind racing 1,000 miles a minute because a couple of things that just on that snippet there. One of the things about stories and always bringing it to this New Thought universal principles is that everything is the story is connected. There are no loose of a good story. If it's a good story, there are no loose ends. Now they may go off on a tangent, but they come back in, and they're there. And so in New Thought, we understand and learn that everything is connected. No so-called good, so-called bad. It doesn't matter, because those labels are what we put on it. There's nothing inherent about the thing itself that makes it one or the other. And so if we understand that, I can take any aspect of a story and spin it to be good, bad, or indifferent. And when we look at our lives in terms of these principles and these teachings that are steeped in our community, it should inspire us, or at least, as you said, be a flint to start a flame for us to get out and tell our stories. Because, as you said, we never know by telling our story who we might inspire or who we might give permission to tell their story. And for me, when I came into New Thought, one of the things that stuck out was New Thought is about living life on your terms, telling your stories, using the experience that you have learned or gained to accentuate or to validate these principles. Because you begin to see them right away when they're put into context. And that's why I'm so glad that we have this conference coming up by African Americans, but it's for everybody in the whole, whites, Hispanics. It's for everybody, so that you can come to the table and see what real soul food tastes like. You understand what collard greens and cornbread taste like, and how it's cooked, and the many different ways you can cook it. And then you begin to appreciate something that you may have looked at previously with disdain. And that is important for us, because for so long we have not been at the table, or we've been excluded from the table, or in the kitchen, if you will, preparing the meal, but not getting a chance to sit down and partake in the meal. And that's why there's so many things I'm excited about, as you can tell, audience, that if you have the opportunity to come to this conference August 11th through the 14th, find a way to be there. And we're working on a virtual platform, so that if you can't be there, you might be able to get that virtual platform together. And if you can't go, you can always send somebody else and tell them to come in and tell you a story about what they saw there.
I'm glad you said that, because every one of these workshops is a story.
Yeah.
So while mine is called storytelling, each one of these workshops enables us to gather more to put in our story. So I'm looking at, well, of course, Reverend Carolyn Douglas is going to be doing one on storytelling as well. But I'm looking here, mine is called This Is Our Story. And you've got Dr. Will Coleman doing Sacred African Spiritualities. That's storytelling. You've got Reverend Michelle Jordan, Unlock the Wisdom of Your Body Through Interplay, Sound, and Movement. We're talking story. Everything is a story. Reverend Charlene Manuel, The Power of Rituals, Symbols, and Ceremonies in Spiritual Practice. We're talking story. Yes. Reverend Galen McDowell, Prosperity, Power, and Spirituality. Story. Yes. Reverend Vernell Nelson, Celebrating Our Golden Life. Reverend Kevin Ross, The Burnout Breakthrough Experience. And of course, Reverend Z here, Egyptian Sacred Sciences and Roots of New Thought. That's storytelling in its essence. And Dr. Lisa Swardarsky is going to talk to us about honoring the spirit, soul, and body as one, storytelling. Reverend Vionella Vaughn Austin, The Cradle of Conscious Spirituality. That's got to be story. And Reverend Alberta Ware, Stepping Out of the Dark into a New Light and a New Life. I mean, all of these, we could just look at each one of these as an opportunity to learn something new to add to our story. Mm-hmm. Because our story is ongoing every day. This encounter right here is adding to our stories. Yes. We have another chapter here, another book here, something else that adds to our story. Yeah. And you don't, it's like that old poem. I love it. I love the stories from the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Acts. I love those stories. The stories are what sold me as a little girl in Vacation Bible School in Louisiana. The stories are what captured my attention. We used to sing that song, Tell Me the Stories of Jesus. So I like those stories. They would would grab me. And I remembered those stories. I learned how to apply those stories at a different level of consciousness through New Thought. Because when I was a kid, those were just stories and they sounded good. And I liked that. And I liked hearing the good news of those stories. But as an adult, now I see the relationship of those stories to my life and how those stories relate to me living a more full and abundant life. And so the stories that we tell are our own gospels. We're actually, that old poem, I'm writing a gospel, a chapter each day by the words, the thoughts that I think and the words that I say. Some people will read my gospel, whether tried or whether true. So what is the gospel according to you? That's my memory of that poem, but everybody is writing their own gospel. And those are stories and we don't recognize it. We're living, when you live the truth, which is Unity's fifth principle. I live the truth, I know, I make a difference. The operative words are I know. So my story can only be as far as I can go with my knowledge, but I build on it. And as I grow in strength and I grow in character and in the truth, then that story just gets better and better. And somebody else, one of these days, when I am not in this physical body, is going to read the story, just like I read those stories from the Gospels, and it's going to inspire them. That's what we live for. So that our story is a living testimony to how to live an abundant life and go through the ups and downs in life and still emerge victorious.
Yeah. You keep striking on a theme that really is calling to me, and that's that piece of growth. And I can't grow without knowing your story. And until I do, it feels like everything's set up that you are immediately an other, no matter what color, shape, anything you are. Until I've heard your story, it's hard. It's easier to look at you as something separate, something other. But the minute I start to hear your story, the minute I find that first connection, that minute my heart is tugged, then we're creating real sense of, wait, you're one. I'm one. We're all one together in this. We're all moving through this. And I'm also really, really excited to see the videos and see what happens and enjoy even more of what you're bringing forward in the world right now.
Yeah. I love that you said that, because I think much of our humanity that's suffering right now, struggling through this idea, is because we are separate in our minds. We're not separate. We're one body, one mind, but we think, because I look like this, you look like that, I live here, you live there, the differences, we think that separates it. But when we really get to know each other, and I love that you said that, when you really listen to someone else's story, a lot of that will dissipate. A lot of that othering will dissipate. But most of the time we don't know. We don't know why someone says or does the things that they do. And so we just make quick judgments. We make snap judgments, and we don't take the time to get to know their story. Storytelling can be an amazing healer.
Yeah. And again, I'm just sitting there thinking, as a lot of the young people continue to express themselves in these spoken word events where they go and do poems or short stories, if you will, and by the ability to dramatize something or to articulate it in a manner where you have voice tones and facial expressions and body languages to capsulize an idea or thought and to grab the audience and pull them into that world, is what we need with New Thought. It's what we need with these principles. And so, as we're thinking about that in your vision, where do you see, New Thought? Because all of us can use it, but I think our youth are in such a precarious situation now where they have all this information at their fingertips, and they haven't had a good storytelling teacher, I believe, or enough of them, to put these various parts together in a story that's going to propel us into a new area or to grow in a different way. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that briefly, if you could.
Well, I think that we have to learn their language. You know, scripture says you can't pour new wine into old wineskins.
Yeah.
And we want to try to teach them in the way that we were taught.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And we may not be at a level where we can learn to speak like the spoken word rappers, but we know people who can. We need to bring them into the fold to teach us.
Yes.
And I know there's a young man here who runs a program called Violence I Prevent, VIP. And that's what he does. He actually reaches, I'd say he's probably in his 30s. He actually reaches the young people wherever they are, and he can rap and speak in a way that they understand, and he's teaching truth.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Anthony Butler, I think is his name. He just does an amazing job, and I think that's what we are missing here. Now, storytelling in history is different. It's good to be able to teach history because you need to know the history or you're doomed to repeat it. So telling those old historic stories, doing the reenactments, that has its place. But if we really want to attract them, we need to find ways to speak their language and to make sure they know that this is for them, because actually we're on borrowed time. This is not ours. This belongs to our children and their children. Yeah. And so we need to be speaking in a language where they can really understand and go forward with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that when, because I often tell my kids about, hey, each family is running a relay race and I ran the first leg and now it's time for me to pass the baton to y'all on the fourth leg, to carry this thing and anchor it on. And then, that pattern repeats itself. And so I love that because most of the time, well, I won't say most of the time, but a lot of the time, the elders, we may get frustrated that the youth aren't listening to us. But the thing that you just pointed out, I think we have to be able to tell the story in a way that's going to be interesting enough to them and in the right language that they'll want to come back and, can you tell me another story? Yes. Whatever that may be, asking for advice or whatever. And if we can begin to put ourselves in that position as a baton pastor, what you do with the baton after I give it to you, I got very little control over that. But what I do have control of is to make sure I get you the baton in the right zone on the track so you can do whatever it is you want to do and you understand the connection between my leg and your leg. And I think for our community and for the world, that is something that we have to begin to articulate and embody more. To save planet, really.
And that's one of those places where I really have a lot of admiration for the team that put together this program and Celebrating Our Soul, because there is programming not just for the youth, but as I look at the schedule and how it all fits together, there's room for the youth to be a part of the experience and for that baton to be passed, if you will, for the stories to be shared. So it's a real family oriented event in that way as well. And I think that's to be commended and recognized. It's important. And I love seeing that this team is demonstrating that during the event.
Yes, they have. I watched the interview with Jerry Hobby that you did last week, and I was so thrilled with everything she had to say and all the time and energy that's been put into making this program accessible for our young people. I'm excited. I want to be part of that. I want to be there. Because and we've reduced it to $75. So it's like a summer camp for 4 days for $75, which we're hoping we can get more kids to be there. And I'm working on that in our outlying communities. But I just think that that's what it's about. I mean, it's not about us. It really isn't. It's about the future. And, we need to lay the groundwork. And, believe it or not, I mentioned the language, speaking their language, but I perform before a lot of young audiences and they get it.
Yeah.
They ask just amazing questions when I'm done. I just had one about a week ago with a group of kids that were having the Young Eagles program. It brings their airplanes out and they fly them around, get their first flights. And so it was right here in Lee Summit at the Lee Summit Airport. a friend, many of them are friends that I've worked with for years and years, and they asked me, but I had something else to do. So I just made an appearance dressed as Bessie Coleman. And I just planned to come in. They had just finished watching a little 3-minute movie on Bessie, and I show up. What turned it out to be, I actually did almost the whole performance. And the kids, there were 30 kids there, and they were just mesmerized. But what got me most was the questions that they asked. I mean, they were really paying attention, and they asked some really good questions. So the kids, the young people want us, they want to hear the stories from us. You know, they want to hear us tell these stories of our own experiences or the lives of those in history. And that's what keeps us alive. That's what keeps us going. Yeah. And that's what paves the way for a brighter future.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, when you look at the tools that the young people have today, they can pick up their iPhone and say, give me anybody, and it's going to pop them right up. Fannie Lou Hamer. Who was Fannie Lou Hamer? It'll give them a ream of information on Fannie Lou. And so when we can, and as you said, even that myriad of websites and blog posts begins to tell a story in somebody's articulation of it. And so the idea of telling the individual stories, which folds into the communal story, which folds into the collective story, you know, where you get the plot and the subplots and you look at life in that way, you begin to say, hey, it's all connected. We working on the same thing. Let's just do it consciously as opposed to unconsciously.
Absolutely. As part of the conference, I'm in charge of the vendors and a 55 passenger charter tour of the of Black history throughout the greater Kansas City area. There'll only be 54 people other than the tour guide, but some people will get to go on that tour on Saturday. And I'm also responsible for vendors, and each of the vendors is a story. Each of them has a product or a service, and they can tell their story about how they got there, what they manufacture, what they sell, what they do. That's a story too. And that story might introduce someone to entrepreneurship who may not have thought about it. I mean, just so much can be gained from this conference that you can think outside the box, you know, from our keynote speakers to our workshop leaders to the youth program that is really a summer camp that is unbelievable. And, you know, our planning team has put a lot of time. We've been working on this for over a year, meeting regularly. Celeste Frazier has just been the leader in coordinating every event coordinator, so to speak, with her team of leaders, with Reverend Linda McLeod, Reverend Edith Washington Woods, and the rest of us, Saba, Reverend Saba, all of us on the team. We've worked really hard, and we're just so excited. We just know this is the beginning of something even greater in the future.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I can't wait, you know, and I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I can't wait to see what we do for year 2.
Well, you know, my Uncle Ollie died at 105, a week before his 106th birthday. He was my father's only living sibling, and he was the oldest. And Uncle Ollie, whenever we'd come for our family reunion in Louisiana, in that little town, Marion, Louisiana, and we'd be at Mount Union Baptist Church, and he would stand up and sing the song that I think is about our ancestry, our heritage, because so many families got splintered off and sold off, and when you can bring all these families together generations later, that's huge for African Americans. It really is. Yeah. And so he would sing this song, when all God's children get together. What a time, what a time, what a time. We're gonna sit down by the banks of the river. What a time, what a time, what a time. And that's what this is going to be. Yeah. All God's children getting together. Yeah. What a time, what a time, what a time.
So you was about to get me into a call and response right there. I was about to
another part of storytelling, call and response.
Yeah. And you know, I fashioned myself as a amateur genealogist, going down my genealogy tree. And when I start looking and looking at all these connections, of people, places, and things and time periods. It as you say, it's a story now. So I begin to look at my grandfather was born in 1873. So I begin to think about when I'm looking at, TV programs that give time periods, I'm thinking, okay, grandpa was X years old when this happened. How did that get translated? How did he deal? Dad was born in 1906. What happened doing this, and that, and the other? And it makes me curious, and it makes me hungry to understand, because there's a lesson there. There's a teaching there, which is what I think one of the things that everyone is on the planet to do, is to help everybody remember who we are, that we are children of God, and that for whatever reason, we've kind of forgot that or misplaced that idea. And these stories begin to help us say, ooh, that hit a chord right there or over there. And boom, we wake up, and now we can enliven that story.
And you just hit the nail on the head, because we're CSL, we're Agape, we're Unity, we're UFBL, we're Hillside, we're TFAM, all God's children getting together. Yeah. That hasn't happened before. This is a first.
You're all just family I haven't met yet.
Absolutely. Yes. And we need to keep that in mind, because, there's always some dissension going on. You got to keep in mind, this is all God's children getting together.
Yeah. Wow. Whoo, baby, folks, if you haven't been here for the last 50 minutes or so listening to what's going down, you missed out. And I'm going to invite you, when we get done, to wait, let the video process and hit it and play again, because this has been a really powerful conversation. We're going to take one more quick minute to say thank you to our sponsors and committed givers, and then come right back with just a little bit more here on New Thought Today. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, for your continued support. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, for your monthly contribution. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, for your monthly contribution. And please help us welcome Om Center for Spiritual Living in La Mesa, California. Thank you for your monthly donation. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, for your most generous donation. And a special thanks to Hefferlin Foundation for your generous technology grant. And Suze Ajit, thank you for your very generous donation. And a super special thank you to Dr. Tracy Brown, RSCP. Thanks for being a super donor. And a big shout out to all our committed donors.
Yes. Thank you to all of our committed givers and organizational sponsors. It's thanks to folks like you that we're able to continue to share this message out into the world and partner with such great organizations as the People of African Descent. We've been talking again today about their upcoming conference, Celebrating Your Soul. You can learn a whole lot more over at their website, padntg.org. Get registered. Yes, I think it's almost sold out for in-person registrations, and there is virtual registration coming very soon. If you can't make it in person, or if you don't want to travel and you want to enjoy a whole bunch of this as well. So before we take off, I want to do final thoughts, but I also realized we haven't asked the question in the room. Reverend Sandra, who are you most excited to connect with or hear speak or watch a workshop from? Who's on like your top checklist of who you can't miss at this conference?
Rev Z. I got to get there. He's got to be really excited. Yeah. Every one of them. I can't pick one that I would like more than the other. Every single one of them. I will be there. And even during my workshop, I hope I can get a copy or something for if someone's workshop is going on simultaneously, because I think the lineup is so great that it would be hard to pick one.
Yeah.
It's like eating one potato chip, and I love potato chips.
Yeah.
Yes. Here we go. All right. Before we go today, folks, we want to get some final thoughts. Rev Z?
Whoa, man. I Rev Sandra has just lit a fire because I have a place where I keep books I want to write, and I got a ton of them, but ain't none of them started writing yet. Stories. And so I would say final words would be start writing, telling, dramatizing, singing, poetry, whatever it is. Start telling that story. Don't wait. Even if you started and somebody has to finish it. I'm inspired now to take 15 minutes a day, which ain't a lot of time. If I can get 2-3 sentences down in 15 minutes, then I've embarked. And that's what this New Thought Conference is about. Celebrating our soul and embarking on letting people know that we as a people and we as a family of New Thought are here with the answer or a answer to problems, and we just have to tell the story. That was a long final point, but
Rev Sandra?
Well, I think Rev Z summarized it well. You know, when we come together, we can make more noise. There's an African proverb that says a single bracelet will not jingle. If you don't believe, put on a bracelet and wave your arm and you won't hear any noise. It's going to take a collective consciousness to make the kind of noise to bring about the change that we know we want to see right now in our world. And us coming together is a part of creating that consciousness. So I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, I always go third, and everybody always steals all the really good, juicy stuff of our conversation, because I almost have to say yes. You have both spoken to it for me today. It's that rekindling of the family, and we're getting all the tribes together. We're getting all the cousins together. We're getting everybody together. And I keep flipping back to something I said just a few moments ago. You all are family I just haven't met yet. And whether it's this time around for me, or I'll be in Unity Village in late September, so I'll make sure that Reverend Sandra, I pick up my jelly bean at that time, and Rev Z will be there in August. Folks, thanks for being with us today on New Thought Today. We'll be back again next week, and we've got Fabian Thomas is going to be our guest next week. So we invite you to join us for that as well. Until next time, we wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.